So, from a naive, idealistic point of view, I want to think about what that process should be for a client, from a client's point of view, for growing a website. Use that word on purpose. So, we start with an idea. Let's say we want to do a website for selling cameras and equipment and so on. A cool place. So we have an idea. We know audiovisual, so let's sell stuff to audiovisual producers. Great, that's a good idea. It's a business intent. What can we sell? Well, we think about it a little bit. It doesn't take long, but we can think of all kinds of things to sell. And then we start to articulate that. And this could be the process of working with your website builder. Or put it from the other point of view, you are the website builder and you're talking to your client, and this is the conversation you have in the early days. What do you want to do with the site? Who are you trying to reach? That's really what this question's about. And we start to articulate it further and further. And this is very much, I suppose we could say it's compatible with Agile. It's an iterative thing. We get down into it. And it's natural. And ultimately, it becomes highly articulated because we've gone into all the details and sub-details. That's great. And then we put all the finishing touches on the content. And the site is looking very good, and we're ready to launch. These are apples, by the way. I threw those in afterwards. Little red spheres representing apples, the fruit of the whole project. Great, that's ideal. But what do we really do with Drupal? Well, after we install, this is what we see. It's a bit daunting for some people, and where do we go from here? That's the question. I added that little note because there are some clues. But where we might naively want to go is, well, I need a menu to hang everything off. So we go and try and make a menu. Let's add something. We found the admin UI for adding menus. So one of our segments was pro photography. Great. And we're going to put that in a path called Pro Center. I took that right off that other website, by the way. That was the path. Great. Save. Oh.
That's right.
What's that?
Yeah, we know this. I know.
I feel your pain. So that's it. Door shut. You're not going to go that route. So back to our list. What are we going to do? Well, let's start at number one. We've built a node. And we're going to push it back to the menu somewhere. Or we're going to give it an alias. It's still pushing it back. The information architecture is a byproduct of creating nodes, creating content. That's what nodes are for, is content, right? So we were busy thinking about articulating the site and how the site should be shaped, how all the pages should be shaped. But suddenly, we're hyper-jumped and dropped into a content scenario. We need the content. But the content's never there. The content is always the last thing to come in, right? Yeah, okay, good. So that's a problem. So we could try this. We build a view. I don't think this is actually making it simpler, but we build a view. And we make it a view page. We push that back out as well. It's the same thing. The information architecture is still a byproduct because that path came after whatever that view was all about, whatever that view was actually retrieving from the database, which is deemed to exist. Or we're developers and we say, I'm just going to hook menu this. And you can start to articulate very well all of these various paths. And if you think about it, I don't know if you ever looked at it, but the Drupal core ships with about 225 paths that start with admin. It's very articulated. It's got a couple for nodes. It's got one for blog, a few for blog. There's only 300, but the majority is admin. So clearly that's what the preference or the priority or the concern was for the people that built Drupal, us, was just make sure you got the admin interface in there, right? The rest of it, the front-facing stuff, is really down to one or two paths, node. Go from there, guys, site builders. Good luck. So, and then Earl came along and tried to rescue us with PALs and Page Manager. Earl himself says the problem with Drupal is it's a push model, and he came up with Panels and Page Manager because it's a pull model. And so there are ways to articulate paths right here, special paths. And I think that's great. It's getting warmer because you can potentially articulate information architecture here. But I think there's problems underneath it that, from my point of view, still limit what you can do with this. And according to our survey, it's a really mixed blessing. It's a love-hate kind of thing. Some people love panels, some people hate panels, period. And one of the comments was it's just too much overhead. That's one of the concerns from one developer we had. So back to this. So we have our initial empty front page, and we can assign a node, assuming the node exists and we had some content for that node. We could push that up to the front page. And Cleaver said, that's the first thing I like to get rid of, that emptiness at the front. Me too. It's just bothersome to see that, there saying, oh, you haven't done this yet. So again, but it still assumes that you can, that there is some node, some URL that actually is valid, that you can actually push to the front. So we haven't really gone very far. But I do think that there's a clue here. I said that before, I'll say it again. There's a clue here. And I want to come back to that later. So what happens, go through that scenario again. We're talking with our clients, and they've got this great idea. We're going to do a website for camera people. Great, let's sell stuff to AV producers. What can we sell? And there's all our segments, the market segments. And we start to articulate it. And then we are asked for content. And it's like hanging apples in space because nothing is there to catch them. We have to start thinking at a whole different level because that's what Drupal wants you to do. Start thinking about the apples now. Forget about the branches. And so what happens is we have to push these apples back to the trunk through these branches, through whatever it is that we're hooking up down in the bowels until we've got a website. And it's a whole different process from that path we were following with the client. We left. We went down here to start building apples and pushing them back up to where they are. So it's a disconnect.